Hello everyone, thanks for tuning into today's video. As always now on a Sunday morning we're going to have a bit of a roundup for what's going on. So we're going to start off centering temperature, then we're going to have a look at what's happening in terms of the North Atlantic and Arctic oscillations. We're going to have a look at the stratosphere, we'll have a look at weather next week, 10 days, and at the end of the video we'll have a look at CFSB2 for the next month as well. So quite a lot to cram in this morning. I hope you enjoy it. Later on we will have the 23rd Christmas update. Coming to the end of Christmas updates now, of course, just a week today will be Christmas Day, so I have that for you this scene probably around 7 o'clock, something like that, on the Christmas updates page. Won't be many more Christmas updates to come. Now I'm going to try and round it off at number 25, which I think will be on Thursday. So before I get on with today's video update, just say about the ads. This links articles on the pages. Have a browse through widgets and click through links. If there's any articles that are interesting you, help us page website. Thanks so much for doing that. It's also video ads, post pages, which own our content. When you watch them and close by coming in, it does help to pay for GWV.com. And Christmas shop is still open, of course, only a week away now, so you really do need to do your Christmas shopping if you got it to do at Amazon through GWV's pretty much today. I would suggest that you want to pay for next day delivery, which is a little bit more money. So it's running down now. I'll carry on mentioning it for the next couple of days, and then I will stop mentioning Christmas shop because it's just getting too late. Get those presents out to you, I would have thought, by the time you get through to around the 20th of December. It's a bit too late. But thanks to everybody for doing their Christmas shopping at Amazon through GWV. And I say you could still do it if you wanted to pay for quick delivery. So click the green button that says Christmas shop. It takes you to our Christmas shop page. And then from there you go through the Amazon banners and just do Christmas shopping as normal at Amazon, because you've gone from GWV to Amazon. We get a revenue fee on the things that you are buying. And a big thank you to everybody for doing that. I say it's been a huge success gain this year. So we'll start off with Central England temperature. Been a very mild first half to December, so this is how we currently stand. Provisional up to the 16th, we're at 7.1, which is an anomaly of 2.2 degrees above average. I think we're heading for a warmer December than November again. This happened last year. We won't have the record-breaking warmth that we had last year. We won't break the CET record. But last year, December was warmer than the month before it, November, and that's going to happen this year. The interesting thing about last year is that November 2015 was also a very mild month. It's also significantly milder than average. Just that December 2015 was even warmer. It really was truly exceptional what happened last December. Done it in a different way this year. The warmth in December this year isn't as extreme as it was in December 2015. And November this year was quite a cold month. It was around 1 degree below average. So that's how we've done it this year. But we're going to do it this year in a completely different way. Still just about possible, I suppose, that December could come in under November's Central England temperature, but it's looking increasingly likely to me that December is again going to be warmer than the month that preceded it. And of course, that's quite unusual. This is a rapidly cooling time of year, so you would normally expect December to be appreciably colder than November. Quite interesting that we've done this 2 years running, because it's a fairly rare thing to be able to achieve. I'll have a look back when I've got time to see whether there's any other years that have had 2 years where December has been warmer than November back to back. Let's have a look at the Arctic oscillation observed and forecast chart then, and see what's happening in terms of the polar region. So the black line is where we've been with the Arctic oscillation, the red line's at the end where the GFS ensembles are forecasting the Arctic oscillation to go. Remember, this is just an index that's reflecting the state of the atmosphere over North Pole. It isn't driving anything. When the Arctic oscillation is positive, it tells you that you've got low pressure over North Pole, and that's typically associated with strengthening the westerlies through the Atlantic and giving us mild winter weather in the UK and Europe. When the Arctic oscillation is negative, it tells you that you've got high pressure up over the pole, and high pressure blocking, high latitude blocking, is the route to cold weather, particularly for the UK and Europe, as it pushes the cold temperatures out of the Arctic and down into the mid-latitudes via the high pressure, via the blocking. So you can see that we can go back into the start of the autumn with this. It's September 30th here, when the Arctic oscillation was generally in its positive phase. Around September to October, around 1st of October, just there, it went negative. So we had lots of blocking over the pole then, and that continued through October and generally into November as well. We had quite a extended negative phase, but since we've gone, again, it's around the turn of the month, quite interestingly, we went negative around the turn of the month from September to October, and then from November to December, around the turn of the month, we went positive again. Looks like we've entered into a more positive phase of the Arctic oscillation, telling us that we've lost the high latitude blocking, we've brought low pressure back in over the North Pole, and actually the GFS ensembles in a few days' time are forecasting the Arctic oscillation to go very, very positive, indeed strongly positive Arctic oscillation, meaning that the polar vortex is going to be strengthening, and that's going to increase the westerlies, and this ties in with what's looking like an increasingly unsettled Christmas period with low pressure really starting to get into the driving seat. And even towards the end of December, which would be this part of the chart just here, generally the Arctic oscillation is being forecast to stay positive. It might drop back closer to neutral, but there's no sign of anything particularly negative coming up through the remainder of December. So that's why I'm fairly confident that, again, December will come out warmer than the month that preceded it, because I think we'll have continued fairly strong westerlies going right the way through the final phase of the month. North Atlantic oscillation is very similar in terms of its forecast. So again, we go back into the autumn with this in terms of the observed part of the chart, and then the red lines at the end is the forecast part of the chart. So we've been fairly negative with the North Atlantic oscillation. Remember, this isn't driving anything, it's just an index reflecting what the atmosphere is doing. Again, this time it's in the North Atlantic as opposed to the Arctic. So through second half of November into the first half of December, quite interestingly, whilst the Arctic oscillation has been trending positive, the North Atlantic oscillation has generally been trending a little bit on the negative side. So the two indexes have been fighting one another a little bit. However, the forecast is to lift the North Atlantic oscillation into positive territory as well. So it looks like we're going to have the Arctic and the North Atlantic oscillations both going positive. That's a very strong signal for westerlies, for mild weather, for the remainder of December. Now, at times, of course, with these westerly winds, we might get some cooler air coming down from the Northern Atlantic, sort of polar maritime air masses. That is perfectly possible, but there's no sign of anything sustained and severe in terms of cold weather, because we can't get high latitude blocking whilst the westerlies are this strong. So it's a pretty strong signal for Atlantic driven second half to December. Look what's happening in the stratosphere. This is from the JMA. This is at 30 HPA over the North Pole. So this is more or less the top layer of the atmosphere, but we can go a bit further up than that to 10 HPA, and I'll show you that in a second. Now you can see what's been happening with the black line here, and the grey line is the trend line. So we're in a cooling time of year. We're about as cold as we're going to get on average in terms of those stratospheric temperatures, and then things should start lifting up through the first 2 or 3 months of the year. So we've been trending very close to the grey line, to the trend line, through this season. We haven't had a plunge in terms of 30 HPA temperatures so far this season. In fact, through most of November and into December, those stratospheric temperatures were a little bit warmer than average at 30 HPA. And we're still a little bit above trend at the moment in terms of those temperatures. That's 30 HPA. But if I show you what's happening at 10 HPA, which is a bit higher, and it's where the polar vortex is really rooted at this level, you can see that actually the temperatures are now plunging. So this is very bad news for anybody that wants cold weather, I think. So this is where we've been with the black line, again, trending very, very close to the grey line. So nothing particularly dramatic going on. At times even a little bit warmer than normal. But just in the past week or so, notice this big drop that's taking place in that black line. at 10 HPA over the North Pole. This is tying in, I would assume, with those increased indexes, particularly the Arctic oscillation going positive, telling us that the polar vortex is strengthening, the cold air is returning to the North Pole, and that is strengthening the westerlies through the Atlantic and into Europe. That's quite a bad sign, and you certainly won't want, if you want cold weather, you wouldn't want to see that getting any colder. You want to lift that up quite quickly back to a grey line. Of course, we're looking for a sudden stratospheric warming to get proper high latitude blocking, which would lift the temperature up to that sort of level at 10 HPA. This is what the GFS is forecasting in terms of those stratospheric temperatures for the next couple of weeks. So this is where we are right now. This is the polar vortex, essentially those cold stratospheric temperatures at 10 HPA. It's a strong polar vortex. Now, remember earlier in the season when we looked at these charts, particularly in November, we had a lot of disruption of the polar vortex, and we constantly have warming occurring around particularly Siberia and putting these cold temperatures under pressure. Well, if we run through, let's see what happens, and we go up towards Christmas. This takes us to Christmas Day. There's no real change. Looks like the polar vortex and those cold stratospheric temperatures, which means the polar vortex is very strongly rooted now to the North Pole. Going further out into the end of December, again, very cold stratospheric temperatures at 10 HPA through towards the end of the month. No sign of any warming occurring, any penetration from Siberia or even from Canada into those cold stratospheric temperatures. So again, that's quite bad signs. If you're looking for cold weather and high latitude blocking, it'll be very difficult to achieve that with such a cold stratospheric temperature over the North Pole. This is how things were looking this time last year, so just thought I'd throw this in. Very similar conditions now, actually. The difference, of course, is that last year, what happened is that it started cold right from the beginning. So right from November, we had a very cold stratosphere over the North Pole. Whereas this year, we had, in November, a fairly warmer than average stratosphere over North Pole, and the polar vortex being put under continuous pressure. But the two scenarios have sort of become very similar now in terms of what was happening over the North Pole this time last year and what's happening right now. We're looking for a sudden stratospheric warming. So this is from 2013. This is the last time we had a midwinter sudden stratospheric warming. Look at all these red colours that we had here on the 5th of January over on the eastern side of the Arctic, over towards Siberia. There is those cold stratospheric temperatures on the Greenland side, the Canadian side of the Arctic. Oh, there was at that point on the 5th of December, but look what happens as we ran through to the 6th and the 7th. Those cold temperatures were just totally obliterated by all of that warming, and they just disappear. So we run through to the middle part of January 2013, and there's hardly any cold temperatures in the stratosphere over the North Pole at all. That's the kind of thing you're looking for if you want to sustain. This was our last cold winter, 2012-2013. It all culminated in what was an extraordinarily cold and blocked March. About the coldest since 1883, something like that. That's the kind of thing you're looking for if you want proper high latitude blocking. When you've got this kind of thing going on with the temperature plunging at 10 HPA, it's very difficult to get high latitude blocking. That doesn't rule out the chance of colder snaps, of course, and colder interludes. So we have to consider that even in a mild winter, you would tend to expect some colder interludes, some northerly winds, maybe a bit of an easterly lasting 2 or 3 days. But to get proper sustained and locked in cold weather, it's very difficult to achieve that when you've got such a cold stratosphere at the top level as we have right now. So this is the GFS temperature and precipitation ensemble chart for the next couple of weeks. Just thought I'd give you this one. And, well, it's a bit of a mess, isn't it? A lot of scatter going on there. But I think what we can say is that we've got quite clear signs of a zonal sine wave setting up. So warmer sectors with low pressure systems coming through here, and then colder sectors coming through here. And then later on in the graph, as we always do, we sort of lose that sine wave. But again, with such scatter, I think what we do see there is that times we're bringing in warmer sectors, times bringing in colder sectors as these areas of low pressure move through. Precipitation, had lots and lots of dry weather, of course, over the past few months. It looks like the Atlantic is returning into the ascendancy, so lots of rainfall spikes coming up through the final phase of December. Real ramp up in precipitation spikes there, which will be a big contrast to what's gone before. This is how the GFS is looking for Thursday then, and we're bringing in westerly winds. There's probably a band of heavy rain in the southeast that will be clearing through. Around Wednesday, Thursday is when the weather is changing to this more unsettled pattern. Christmas Eve brings low pressure across the country. That could bring quite a bit of rain, especially on Christmas Eve morning, followed by brighter, colder skies. And if you want to be isobars back there, the air is coming from sort of Greenland, Iceland into Scotland. So it does mean that on Christmas Eve there might be wintry showers in the north. Certainly wouldn't rule it out, especially over high ground. So if you bet on a white Christmas somewhere like Glasgow, might be okay. Glasgow Airport could get a few flakes of snow. You wouldn't rule it out, certainly. Then going into Christmas Day, and this looks quite nasty, actually. Really deep area of low pressure coming into Scotland on Christmas Day, 955 millibars, a long time since we've been that low with the pressure. The isobars are very, very tightly packed there, indicating after what might be a frosty start, it might look quite seasonable first thing on Christmas Day. It very quickly turns dull, wet and windy, heavy rain sweeping in. And that's certainly up to gale force, I would have thought, in terms of the wind there for Scotland and Northern Ireland. So that could be quite nasty. As I say, we'll do the 23rd Christmas update this evening. Boxing Day, looking unsettled. Not as windy, but probably showery. And for the north, those showers might again be turning a little bit more on the wintry side. And then that takes us up towards day 10, which is Wednesday, 28th of December. By which time we're under a little bit of a colder ridge there, so that's a bit colder. But look what's happening to the south of Greenland. Very deep and intense area of low pressure is winding itself up again. Really deep storm. So that looks a bit ominous as we're heading up towards New Year. I won't go any further than that right now because we're going to look at the whole of Christmas period to New Year this evening. That's the GFS. This is the central Earth again. We've got rain in the southeast on Thursday. That's when we're changing the weather pattern through to Christmas. Tones increasingly unsettled. This is a band of heavy rain sweeping across the country on Christmas Eve, followed on Christmas, late Christmas Eve into Christmas Day by a slightly colder air mass, which might turn showers wintry, especially over high ground in the north. This is next area of low pressure in the middle of the Atlantic. We get through to sort of midnight Christmas night, so this is midnight sort of Boxing Day, if you like, and when it looks quite stormy, doesn't it, particularly in the north and west, severe gales possible in the far north of Scotland. Colder air coming out of the Greenland as well, so again, you wouldn't rule out chance of some snow over high ground in the north. In the south would be just rain. And then that takes us up to day 10, where we have a little bit of a ridge of high pressure, meaning slightly colder air there on the 27th. Before the next area of low pressure rolls in. It's a case of rinse repeat as we get through into day 10, Wednesday 28th. That's bringing another band of heavy rain, probably quite strong winds. And notice behind that one, we've got this area of low pressure developing around Newfoundland. That will probably be rattling in a couple of days afterwards. That takes us towards New Year, of course. So it all looks a bit grim. If you want proper cold weather, let's just have a look and see whether the CFS can shed anything, any good news, any Christmas cheer For people that want cold weather, these are the 500 millibar height anomalies broken down into weekly periods. This takes us from the 18th to 24th of December, so for the coming week. We start off with this ridge dominating to the east of us, but the low pressure is gathering around Greenland, Iceland, and that will be breaking down the ridge with time as we head up towards Christmas, turning things more unsettled. Now we go through to the 25th to the 31st of December. And a little bit different to what we're just looking at, and that the CFS wants to keep this ridge quite strong over Scandinavia, which keeps this trough of low pressure in the Atlantic a little bit at bay. So we find the wind's probably doing something a little bit like that. But it isn't as stormy, it isn't as unsettled. There could be some rain in the west at times. It would be fairly mild, though, through to the end of the year. Then we go through to week 3, which is the 1st through to the 7th of January, so through the first week, 2017. That high pressure is moving in from the east, so it's turning the winds into the east there. That could be starting to drag colder air in from eastern parts of Europe, so maybe signs that it's turning colder there through the early part of January. And then this looks really quite good for cold weather. As we go through to the 8th to the 14th of January, we find this area of above average heights to the north of Scotland. It does go back up to Greenland as well. We've got low pressure down across Spain. That's always a very good sign if you want cold weather. And you would have thought the winds would be coming in probably from the east or the northeast there. And if that high pressure, if that ridge was to go a little bit further towards there, we would probably turn the winds into the north. That would be very cold, putting the winds out of the Arctic. So that looks quite good for cold conditions. Go through the early part of January. The temperature anomalies are backing this up. So the next week up to Christmas Eve is milder than average. And then the following week, Christmas week, that also comes out milder than average. But let's go through to early 2017. This is the 1st through to the 7th. We find the north is still a bit milder than average, but the south is going colder. Notice a lot of cold weather across eastern and central parts of Europe. And then as we go through to the 8th through to the 14th of January, also we're more or less colder than average, as is most parts of Europe as well. So it does imply that we get through to January and winter finally starts to kick in with what we have on week 4, a big blocking ridge there to the north of Scotland going up towards Greenland. But I struggle to see that happening when we've got the temperature at 10 HPA as cold as that. I struggle to see how we're going to get blocking up to Greenland in that position when the temperature over the stratosphere at 10 HPA over the North Pole is that cold. It's a bit of an enigma this winter, quite what's happening, because the long range model, we saw this, or been seeing this with the UK Met Office model, and also with the East Central UF long range model, and CFS has been in there as well a little bit. The longer range models have been generally going towards trying to produce blocking and cold conditions. That's what we had in November. They've tried to carry that through into the winter. The shorter range models we're just looking at, going out to day 10, for example, they just don't see it. They haven't seen them. They've been proved right so far this December, because it's turning out to be a very mild month. These longer range models are still indicating colder conditions for January, but I'm struggling to see how we get it with those cold temperatures over the North Pole that we've got right now in the stratosphere. So we're just going to have to wait and see. Something going to have to give between these models. Either the long range models will come into line and they'll eventually start forecasting a mild Atlantic driven January, or something else is going to happen and we'll get some blocking, but quite how we get it, I'm struggling to see. Right, that's it for this morning's update, or today's update. So, hope you enjoyed it. This evening we'll have a detailed look at the whole of the Christmas period, starting from around the 23rd, 24th, around Christmas Eve, and going off into the new year. So come back for that this evening. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.